Sometimes I think that the internet knows me better than I know myself. Like, have you ever been like scrolling through Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or whatever? You're reading a caption or you see a photo or you're watching a video and you just think that this video is describing like an aspect or a moment in your life to the perfect T. The other day I'm sitting in my reading chair, like scrolling through my phone. Yes, I have a reading chair because I'm old and cool like that, right? So I'm scrolling through my phone and I'm on Instagram and I see this meme and this is what it says. I don't know who needs to hear this, but throw away that box that your iPhone came in. You don't need it. You will never need it. Now, I saw this meme like plenty of times, like all within 1 week. So this thing's like trending. My friends are sharing it and stuff. So I'm like thinking to myself, man, there must be a lot of people out there that have kept their iPhone box. And I'm sitting in my chair and I'm like, no, not me. Maybe. So I stand up. I walk through my living room, down my hallway, into my room, and I like kick open the door and I'm like, I see it. There's this drawer in my room where I keep like all of my random crap that I don't really ever need to look at. And I'm thinking to myself, if I have an iPhone box that's in that drawer, I pull it open, I look inside, it's kind of a disaster, and I see it. My Nintendo DS right there. I'm gonna like grab it, play some Pokemon, I pick it up, and underneath it is an iPhone box. Now the funniest part about all of this is that I haven't bought a new phone for like many years. Like I'm still rocking an iPhone 7 and this thing is like ancient, right? Like I'm rocking an iPhone 7 and I think I bought this phone in like 2016 back in Alberta. Like I remember the Best Buy in Lethbridge, like I bought it there. So think about this for a second. I bought this phone, this box was with me in Alberta. Then I came to BC, I'm living on my college dorm and the box is with me there. Then I moved to Coquitlam like a few years ago. My box is there. I moved back to Surrey and my box is still in my room. Like I've brought this thing everywhere with me. Like I'm a hoarder of iPhone boxes. I'm like, this meme described me to a T. And this whole situation kind of reminded me of this old TV show that my mom used to watch on like TLC or something like that. It was a show called Hoarders. Now, Hoarders was crazy, okay? Like I'm just gonna get that out there. This was a show that was like looking at the lives of people who have compulsive hoarding disorder. So essentially they hoard all this stuff and they just like get more and more of these certain things and it's like ridiculous in their house. Like it could be like pet food, like just everywhere in their house or like dishes or clothes or garbage even. And there's even this one episode where this lady just like collected cats, like stray cats off the street and everything. She had like 30 cats in her house. It was like a zoo of cats or whatever. It's crazy. And this show is kind of a ridiculous example that I think something that we all struggle with a little bit. And the struggle is that we just want more. We want more and more stuff. We want more and more possessions. We want more and more material goods. We want the newest and the best and the brightest of things. And there's this one article I was reading that really highlighted this whole situation. It said many different things. Listen to some of this. There are 300,000 items in the average American home. And still, 1 out of every 10 Americans rents from a storage unit. The United States has upward of 50,000 storage facilities. So not like, your individual little storage unit. 50,000 storage facilities with tons of storage units in it. That is four times the amount of Starbucks in the United States. So I think I see a Starbucks like literally on every street corner or like whatever. So think about that, 4 times more storage units. The average American family spends $1,700 on clothes annually. Well, also the average American throws away 65 pounds of clothes each year. Some reports would indicate that we consume twice as many material goods today as we did 50 years ago. And Americans spend 1.2 trillion annually on non-essential goods. In other words, items that we do not need. Now, I know a lot of these stats were about America, but I think we here in Canada, our culture is very similar. We want more things. We want to accumulate more stuff. We want more and more. We want new and we want better. And when you are living in the middle of a culture like this, when your life is just saturated in a world like this, it can be very hard to identify this problem. But the Bible has a word that it uses to describe this type of problem, and that word is greed. And the Bible talks a lot about greed. And I think for you and I, if we're on the same boat, when we think of the word greed, we mostly think about money. But I just want to get this out there. When the Bible's talking about greed, it's talking about a lot more than money. You can be greedy with your time, with your energy, with your possessions, with your talents. But at the same time, the Bible does talk a lot about money. Like think about this. In the Bible, there are over 500 verses just about prayer. Now, prayer is a very important thing. Like we talk about all the time. I pray hopefully multiple times a day, and I would encourage you to do that. Like prayer is like a foundational thing for the Christian life. 500 verses about prayer. There are over 2,000 2,000 verses about money. Jesus himself in the Gospels, he's talking about money all the time. He talks about money more than he talks about heaven, more than he talks about hell, more than he talks about eternal life, and all three of those things combined. He talks about money all the time, and Jesus talks about money all the time because it's very important. But it's interesting to note that he never asks for any. Jesus is constantly going on and on about money, but he never asks for any. Why? Because Jesus is more concerned about our heart. He's going after the heart, the thing that guides our actions. Listen to this, Matthew chapter 6, this is the Sermon on the Mount. He says, "Do not lay up for yourself treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourself treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So Jesus is going after the heart. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. But greed is not just about money. Remember, you can be greedy with your time, with your talents, with your possession, with all sorts of different things, and your money. But he's also saying that treasures on earth are very vulnerable, right? He's saying that they can be taken away. They can disappear. They can be destroyed. They can be stolen from you. They can be removed from circumstances outside of your control. Treasure on earth is vulnerable, and it does not last. Think about your most prized possession. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like a gaming system, or your phone if you got a new one, like an iPad, your new shoes, or like a car if you have one. Think about your most prized possession, and think about all the things you've owned throughout your life that are like material goods. And then think about a dump. This is really weird. The dump is a great reminder that your material possessions do not ultimately matter in life, because most of the things that you own are eventually going to end up in a dump. If all you do is accumulate more and more things, if your entire life is geared towards having the newest and the best and the brightest stuff, then you are going to be deeply let down. You are going to experience a lot of loss. When rich people die, think about this. When a rich person dies, they leave behind the exact same thing that a poor person does. Everything. When you die, you leave behind everything. So if your entire life is geared towards getting more stuff, towards getting newer stuff, you are going to be deeply disappointed when you cannot take that with you to eternity. Jesus goes on to say this, "No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other." Listen to this. You cannot serve God and money. And remember, Jesus here, he is after the heart. He isn't just so much concerned with you doing the Christian day-to-day things like memorizing Bible verses or going to youth on Tuesday or going to church on Sunday or like praying before every meal. He loves all of those things, but he's not really going on about that. He is after the heart. So the ultimate question that I think he's asking is, what do you love? What is the thing that is guiding your life? Or in the words of this verse, what are you serving? Do you serve God or do you serve money? Do you serve God or do you serve your possessions? What is the thing that is guiding your life? And the thing is, there will always be something new. There's always going to be something better and bigger and brighter. There's new things coming out all the time. Like every time I buy a new phone, I'm so frustrated because the next year there's a new one. It just keeps going over and over and over again. So your pursuit of satisfaction is never going to end. It's never going to end. There's this concept that a lot of authors talk about. It's called the God-shaped hole. And this is like an idea. There's something that we are searching for to satisfy us in life. Now, we all have this. We're all looking, whether it's popularity or status or whatever. But a lot of people are looking to fill their lives and be satisfied by their possessions, by gaining more and more things in life. Like if only I could have the nicest car, or if only I could have the nicest phone, or if only I could have the nicest clothes, then I would be satisfied. And this is a never-ending cycle. When I graduated from high school, I worked full-time in construction. I just took a year off and I got a hammer and some nails and I was just building stuff all over the place. I was working a lot of overtime, but at the same time, I was still living in my parents' house. So I wasn't really spending a lot of money. I had an old car. I'm just doing my thing and I wasn't spending any money. I was saving and saving and saving. And by the end of this year, I had more money than all of my friends. I had more money than my older siblings. I had more money than my older cousins. I had more money than most people my age. But still, if I'm being honest with you, I wasn't that happy. I wasn't that satisfied. And honestly, I was kind of nervous. I had all this money. I was anxious. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't want to lose it. I didn't really know what to do, but I wasn't satisfied. I needed more. I just felt like I didn't have enough. I needed to keep going, keep working, work harder, work more hours. I needed more stuff. And Jim Carrey, he's this famous actor, and I think he really encapsulates this entire idea with this brilliant quote. He says this, "I think everybody everybody should get rich and famous and do everything that they ever dreamed of so that they can see that it is not the answer. See, this is why Jesus is going after the heart. We were made to love God. We were made to serve God. We were made to follow God. And He is the only thing that can fill that God-shaped hole in your life. But we are constantly pursuing lesser things and making them our gods, pursuing them, and we are ultimately going to be let down. Ultimately, we're going to be let down. So what is the solution to this greed issue? Well, part of what it means to follow Jesus is to follow Jesus and to let Him in and saturate every area of our lives. So the antidote to our greed problem, the solution to our greed problem is this one word, generosity. Generosity. What is generosity? It is an attitude, an inward disposition that spawns acts of self-sacrifice, which is how God acts towards us. And this is all throughout the Bible, especially in the New Testament. As soon as the Christian church is established in the book of Acts, radical generosity is the thing that defines Christians. Acts chapter 2. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. They're sharing everything. They're selling everything for the good of the community. They are completely other-focused. This next verse, 2 Corinthians, Paul says this, each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And the reason I love this is because this is completely upside down. Think about how the world is pitching you the story of the good life. It is, get this thing, get this new, get this bright, get this shiny thing, and you will be happy. The more stuff you have, the bigger stuff you have, you will be more happy. And God flips it upside down. He says life is not so much about you gaining more and more things. It's about you giving. It's less about yourself gaining and gaining, and it's more about giving away to others. Let me explain it this way. There are two types of board games. Essentially, at least the games that I play, some people nerd out on board games or whatever. There's essentially two types of board games that I play. There's those games where the sole purpose of the game is to accumulate and gain more and more and more things. Then there are those type of games that are, the sole purpose is about getting rid of all of your stuff. And if you could be the first one to do that, then you win the game. So this one type of game would be like Monopoly, right? The whole purpose of Monopoly is you go around the board over and over and over again, and you're trying to accumulate all of this stuff, right? You're trying to get more money, you're trying to get houses or whatever put on your property, and that's the point of the game. Get more and more and more stuff. That's how you win. Then there's a game like Uno. Now Uno, the whole point of the game is you start with these cards and you are trying to get rid of those cards faster than everybody else. And if you are the first one to get rid of those cards, then you win, right? So there's two types of games, one about accumulating, more about getting rid. And what Jesus is saying in this passage is that our lives as Christians are meant to be a whole lot more like a game of Uno than a game of Monopoly. A life completely other-centered, a life completely about giving and getting away, not about accumulating more and more things. Now, I told this story a little while ago, but a couple years ago, I crashed my car. And it was one of the worst days ever, right? I had a lot of stuff going on. I'm running all over the place, and I crashed my car. It's the worst. So in the midst of this, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to Alberta in 2 days for Christmas break. This is the worst. I have to do all this stuff beforehand. And my friend, a good friend of mine, had come to pick me up from my accident. And I thought he was just going to drive me home and leave me there. And I was going to figure this all out all by myself. And I'm a disaster, right? But instead of bringing me home, he brings me to where he was living. And we get there and I'm a little confused and I don't know what's going on. And he gets up out of his vehicle. He walks over to me. I get up and he puts his keys for his car in my hand. And he says, I know you need this more than I do right now. So please borrow my car. That's generosity. That is someone who's completely other-centered. And I love how one pastor describes generosity. He says, generosity is love in action. And the reason he does that, the reason he describes it this way is because it is through the act of generosity, think about this, it's through the act of generosity that God himself displayed love for the world. Think about that famous verse, John 3:16 says, for God so loved the world that he, what? He gave his only son. Or Paul in 2 Corinthians again, he has this amazing verse, listen to this. For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, for your sake he became poor, so that you, by his poverty, might become rich. You see, Jesus himself, Jesus Christ, our King, he was at a high place. He was elevated at a high status, and he sacrificially gave up his place, and he became poor, so that others who are in a place of poverty could be elevated. It's completely backwards. The story of the gospel is the story of God humbling himself and entering into our poverty. And on the cross, he absorbs all of our sin, all of our guilt, all of our mistakes, and all of our pain into himself. But because of his love and because of his great grace and his power, not even death could stop him. It's beautiful. Even though he was rich, for your sake, he became poor. You see, the reason Christianity is even a thing is because God was radically generous to us through Jesus. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. The reason Christianity even exists is because God himself was radically generous and gave Jesus for us. Generosity is about so much more than money. It's about so much more than money. It's about our lives being lived in response to God and the gospel. So the question is, how will you, as a high school student, how will you display generosity? How will you live this Christian life? How will you use your time? How will you use your treasure and your talents to display love and action to those around you? How will you live your life completely other-focused? And in so doing, partner with Jesus in the gospel, being radically generous. So that's all we have for you guys this week. I hope you guys have a great discussion, and we will see you guys next week.